Hello, it's Jason again with another talk about de-spiritualization. Okay, so I think last time I hinted that I would talk about other reasons why we might actually choose to be despiritualized in a sense. Up to this point, I've only mentioned why I believe we have a spirit. We mentioned, the intuition, the things we seem to know. And they're generally very preferred beliefs that most people share. The idea that we have agency, that we have free will, we can choose things. And therefore, of course, once you have the ability to choose things, the question has to be asked, okay, what do we choose? And that brings in the concept of morality, that some choices are better than others, or more just, or more fair, and some choices are therefore good, and some choices are selfish or evil, or however you want to describe the choices. The point is the choices, if once there is choice, it opens the door to comparing choices, right? And that's kind of what ethics and morality are about. How do you make your choices? What are they based on? And what are the better choices? And there's, of course, you can study lots of philosophers and their views on ethics for that. But the point is we've discussed it throughout history and acted as though we do have free will and that our choices do matter. This implies, as I mentioned, that there's something within us or a part of us that is not simply fated to follow the laws of physics and do whatever the laws of physics instruct it to do, like a physical organ would, like the brain. Okay, so we talked about how our focus on the strength of science, which focuses on the physical, has kind of brought our attention more and more to the physical, and we look more and more for physical solutions. Even when it comes to psychology, I think we've seen that there's more and more medications being prescribed. The idea is that, well, a mental problem, a psychological problem, the psyche is due to the activities of the brain. So the way to solve those sort of problems is to address the brain. And of course, that's going to work sometimes, maybe quite a bit of the time, because there are medications that do help brains. There are brains that do have chemical imbalances and other issues that hopefully medications can help with. But even if everybody had a very healthy brain, I think we would still see some anguish and and depression and anxiety and so forth, because if our spirit is unattended, then half of what makes up our mental outlook, or makes up our mind, we'll say, is being neglected. And I mentioned that I think a lot of that is just because our society is such that it doesn't really encourage looking at the spirit and solutions in that direction. It encourages the physical and looking at the physical and dealing with the physical. And one reason is because science has done a very good job of dealing with lots of our physical problems. But last time I hinted that perhaps we also have internal reasons to become less spiritual. Right, the other reasons I gave implied that maybe people would be more spiritual, but they're just so focused on the physical because there's been a lot of breakthroughs on the physical side of things. So let's keep going that way. I mean, we keep finding, more information, and we apply it and so on. But studies, many studies have shown a couple things. One, as our science and technology has progressed, so has a lot of pollution. There seems to be some negative side effects to all of our advancements, and this is another topic often covered in science fiction. And another problem is we seem less happy. We have more free time, we have less physical pain perhaps, and longer lives, but we don't seem as happy as less advanced societies, whether it's in another place in the world or our own society, 50 or 100 years ago. It doesn't seem to be as much contentment. And there's lots of theories about that. But I think it's obviously my position is that it's probably because we're just less and less focused on the spiritual. And again, science fiction often covers this, the idea that uh, while we keep improving physical things, we're neglecting what makes us human. And if we did have a spirit, of course, that would be the primary thing in a sense that makes us human, because our bodies are very similar to, physically, are very similar with mammals, other mammals, especially primates. And, they will tell you, you'll read that the genetic differences are pretty small. It was like 98% similarities or something. I don't remember. But, and so when it comes to physically treating us, what works on a primate or even on a mouse could be useful for us. But if you have a spirit, none of that helps. So why would we be inclined not only to unwittingly focus less on the spirit, but deliberately focus less on the spirit? Well, as we mentioned, the idea of a spirit opens up the idea of free will and morality and so on. And it opens the door to the idea that you could be wrong. You could be making bad decisions, wrong decisions, with your free will. And one thing I think we have seen, another reason could be, it's easier to treat people badly if you think of them as non-spiritual beings. That's another thing we looked at before, is the spirit. If we have a spirit, that would elevate man to a different status than animal. Yes, we would still be physically categorized as animals, mammals, primates, but since we seem to observe that we are not just the most advanced primate, but there was something else, there seems to be a quality about us that is very unique, and we see it in so much of our activities, in the way we treat each other, in the way we talk about our species and so forth. It appears that we do have this spirit. However, just think of all the times we use the word animal in a derogatory term, like being treated like an animal or someone acting like an animal. What do we usually mean by that? Usually we mean there's a disregard for humanity. There's a disregard for the idea that each person is important because they have a spirit, and the idea that there's a certain moral code about how we treat human beings. And if someone goes around treating everybody badly, just killing them and running amok, we will say it's kind of animalistic behavior. Or if the victim is treated a certain way, we'll say, oh man, he just treated them like an animal. And the idea is that you treat them as though they didn't have a spirit, or this person is acting as though they didn't have a spirit. We might use the word conscience in there, which would be definitely part of, again, the mind. So brain and spirit combined, the idea of knowing right and wrong, and knowing that you should choose right if there's a reason to choose right over wrong. That's another issue, right? Even if we agreed that there's right and wrong, there's got to be a reason to choose right over wrong, other than you might get caught and maybe punished by society. This brings up the whole ring of Gyges idea, if you are familiar with that. How would you act if you could be invisible and you knew you wouldn't be caught for your actions? Then what would you do? Is there still a reason to choose good over evil? Anyway, so one reason to despiritualize is because sometimes we would prefer not to see other people as people. We prefer to use them, or we see them as objects in our way. And good example is pornography. But there's many other things like that too. And people feel, I feel so used. I feel so used. Well, what does that mean, I feel used? It means you felt like you weren't treated like a person with your own importance, your own identity of being important just because you're a human being. You were only a step in their life to get to somewhere else. And it feels demeaning or even dehumanizing. So that's one reason, is if we can view others as being kind of less spiritual or not spiritual at all, we can treat them worse. We can use them as in our own schemes to do what we want. But another one that I've seen, that I think that we're seeing on the rise, is actually the desire to be absolved of self-discipline. In a kind of ironic twist, it seems that more and more people are seeking to be free by denying free will. It doesn't sound like it makes sense at first, but I think you'll see it. If I don't have free will, then my behavior or my beliefs or my tendencies or my proclivities or whatever it is, I can say, I can't help that. That's just who I am. It's who I am. That's just who I am. And I can't do anything about it. This absolves the person of any moral judgments, because if you can't choose something, then that doesn't open the door to, okay, if it is a choice, then we have to decide, is it a good choice or a bad choice? But if there's no choice at all, then suddenly it becomes an amoral issue. It has nothing to do with morality because it's unchoosable. Now, of course, if there's something that I can choose, and it's just a really tough choice, then I might have to employ a lot of self-discipline and say, look, here's where I'm at in my mentality or in my actions or in my something, but I'd really rather be over here. I'm pretty sure this is the better place over here, but it's tough. It's tough. I have a choice. Right there, I have a choice. I have a choice to say, okay, I'm going to discipline myself. I'm going to surround myself with some helpers as well, some people that can help me out with this, and I'm going to, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try and work on my mentality or my behavior or whatever it is, and go down the path that I think that looks like it's the better path, even though it's not the easier path or the path that I'm used to. I think it's the right path. Or you could say, I'll never be able to do that because I can't help. I can't help it. This is just how I am. And you'll just have to love me like this. And so if you throw your hands up and say, it's something I can't choose, it's just who I am, you're free. You're by giving up your free will on that particular thing, you freed yourself from rebuke or criticism. You freed yourself from the agony and the hard work of self-discipline. So I feel like this is happening more. Maybe you'll disagree with that. That more and more there's just kind of this throw your hands up, like this is just who I am, and that the more we do that to ourselves, the more we say I can't choose, the more we're denying, I would say, our spiritual component. We're saying I'm just a product of things that I had no control over. Either my background, which shaped my brain, or just my brain in general. That's who I am through nature or nurture. It doesn't really matter that much because this is where I am now. And because of that, this is who I am. And, that's the end of the story. The more we do that, the more we're denying the Spirit. We're denying the idea that we can indeed make choices. So I do feel like this is also another thing that's leading to de-spiritualization, is that it would allow me to, if I de-spiritualize other people, it allows me to use them for my pleasure, or to use them as stepping stones along my path to wherever I want to be. It allows me to, that's one reason why we see people act so much worse online, is because it's not a very spiritual place. We're not encountering people in real life. We're not making eye contact. And so it's much easier to just treat them like words on a screen, right? It's just not the same. So if I de-spiritualize others, I can treat them worse. And if I de-spiritualize myself, I can absolve myself of self-discipline in the areas where I feel like this is just too hard. I'm just going to say, this is who I am. And I can't choose any differently. This is just who I am. So I think these are two other reasons the way we treat others and the way we treat ourselves, that also kind of shows how a person might decide they don't want to treat people or themselves as though they had a spirit. Okay, I'll stop there. Except I will say one interesting one, what I think is kind of ironic, and that is, it seems that people who often do say, like there's person A and there's person B, and person A is like, I can't. This is who I am. I can't help it. So person B, you'll just have to accept me the way I am, because I can't help it. This is just who I am. And person B is in their mind are saying, well, I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. They're asking me to change. And it's interesting that they think they can't change, but I must for their sake. It's interesting how that free will thing works only in one direction. They don't have the ability to change their attitude or their behavior or whatever, but somehow I have the ability to accept it, even though I find it repulsive or I find it annoying. But I can change. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's just an observation. Anyway, so yeah. So next time we'll start looking more at how can we address our spirits? How can we